You think working harder will get you promoted. But the truth is, the system was never designed to reward effort. You wake up early, you stay late, you fix problems no one else can fix. You take on extra work when others avoid it. You believe that if you just keep delivering, eventually someone will notice. But weeks turn into months, months turn into years, and nothing really changes. You watch people around you move ahead. Some are less skilled, some are less committed, some barely do half of what you do. And still, they get the recognition, the opportunities, the promotions. At first, you question yourself. Maybe you're not good enough. Maybe you need to improve. Maybe you just need to try harder. So you do. And somehow, it gets worse. Because the more you give, the more they take. The more reliable you become, the more responsibility they pile on you. The more problems you solve, the more problems they assign to you. And slowly, without realizing it, you become the person the system depends on, but never rewards. This is where most people get trapped, not because they're weak, but because they're playing a game they don't fully understand. You were taught to believe that effort equals progress, that loyalty equals security, that good work speaks for itself. But those are surface-level rules, and the system doesn't run on surface-level rules. It runs on power, perception, and positioning. The truth is simple. Your boss is not rewarding how hard you work. Your boss is rewarding how useful you are to their goals. If your work makes them look better, you get visibility. If your work disappears into the background, you get more work. That's the difference. Not quality, not effort, visibility. You can build something that saves the company hundreds of hours, and no one notices. Someone else can present it in a meeting, and suddenly they're seen as the leader. Because in most environments, the person who tells the story owns the result, not the person who created it. And once you understand that, everything starts to shift, because you realize something uncomfortable. You were never being evaluated purely on performance. You were being evaluated on perception. And perception is controlled in rooms you're not even in. There are conversations happening about you that you'll never hear. Labels being attached to your name that you never agreed to. He's reliable but not leadership material. She's great technically, but not strategic. And once a label sticks, it doesn't matter what you do. Everything gets filtered through it. If this hits, comment 1 below. Because most people never see this happening. They just feel it. They feel the doors closing, the opportunities disappearing, the shift in tone from their manager. But they don't understand why. So they try to fix it the only way they know how, by working harder. But effort was never the problem. The real issue is deeper. It's structural. Organizations don't reward the best performer. They reward the safest choice. The person who is predictable. The person who is easy to manage. The person who doesn't disrupt the hierarchy. Because promoting someone is not just about capability. It's about control. A highly skilled employee who questions decisions, pushes boundaries, and demands clarity is seen as risk. A less capable employee who agrees, adapts, and follows direction is seen as stability. And in high-pressure environments, managers don't choose the best. They choose the safest. That's the shift most people never see. You think excellence makes you valuable, but in reality, controllability often matters more. That's why the more you start asking for recognition, input, or better conditions, things start to change. Not suddenly, subtly. You're no longer invited to certain meetings. Your feedback becomes vague. Your growth suddenly becomes a development area. You didn't get worse. You just became harder to control. And the system doesn't punish that directly. It just slowly removes you from the path. This is the moment where most people get confused, because everything still looks normal on the surface. But underneath, you've already been reclassified. From high potential to needs alignment. And no one tells you. You just stop being chosen. Now here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. The system doesn't just reward visibility. It also exploits reliability. At the beginning, being dependable feels like an advantage. You're trusted, respected, chosen. But over time, that trust turns into expectation, and expectation turns into pressure. You become the person who handles the hardest tasks, the broken projects, the missing roles, the impossible deadlines, and every time it sounds like praise. We trust you with this, but it's not recognition. It's allocation. You've been identified as someone who absorbs chaos. And once the system sees that, it keeps feeding you chaos. Because fixing the system is expensive, using you is not. So instead of building better processes, hiring more people, or solving root problems, they give it to you again and again and again until one of two things happens. You break, or you leave. And when you do, they don't analyze why. They replace you because from their perspective, the system worked. That's the reality most people never accept. The system is not designed to be fair. It's designed to function. And if it functions while draining you, it will continue. This is why loyalty doesn't protect you. You can stay through hard times. You can sacrifice. You can prove commitment. But when priorities shift, you become expendable. Not because you failed, but because you no longer fit the current direction. And that decision will happen in a meeting you're not invited to. That's how the system operates. Upward, it's strategic. Downward, it's emotional. You're expected to be loyal. They're allowed to pivot. Samavord, different meaning. And if you don't see that clearly, you'll always be the one sacrificing. There's another layer to this, one that most people completely ignore. Meetings. You think meetings are about sharing information. They're not. They're about power. Who gets to speak? Who gets interrupted? Who gets acknowledged? Who gets ignored? Who repeats an idea and suddenly gets credit? You've seen it happen. You've said something in a meeting and no one reacted. 10 minutes later, someone else says the same thing and suddenly it's brilliant. That's not coincidence. That's hierarchy. Because in most systems, ideas don't win. People do. And once you see that, you stop focusing only on what you say. You start paying attention to where you stand. Now let's go deeper. Feedback. You've been told it's for growth. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's for compression. You're told to be less direct, less visible, less vocal, more polished, more measured, more aligned. And it sounds like development, but the effect is reduction. You become smaller, softer, easier to manage, and you accept it because you think you're improving. But if every piece of feedback is making you quieter, you have to ask a harder question. Who benefits from you becoming quieter? Because growth doesn't always mean expansion. Sometimes in these systems, it means containment. And if you don't recognize that, you'll slowly shrink into a version of yourself that fits the system, but no longer serves you. Now here's the part most people never realize until it's too late. Job security doesn't come from being essential. It comes from being explainable. You might be doing critical work, holding systems together, solving problems no one else understands. But if leadership can't describe your value in one sentence, you're vulnerable. Because when decisions happen at higher levels, complexity loses. Clarity wins. The people who stay are not always the most important. They're the easiest to justify. And if your value is invisible, it's undefendable. This is why so many talented people get blindsided. They thought their work spoke for itself. But work doesn't speak. People do. And if no one is telling your story, it doesn't exist. That's the system, not the one you were told about, the real one. And once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. You stop chasing validation through effort. You stop confusing praise with protection. You stop believing that access means loyalty. And most importantly, you stop playing a game you were never meant to win by effort alone. Instead, you start thinking differently. You focus on visibility, not just output. You connect your work to outcomes that matter, to decision makers. You manage perception, not just performance. You set boundaries that actually hold, even when it costs you something. Because a boundary that bends is not a boundary. It's permission, and permission gets exploited. You start choosing where to invest your energy instead of giving it away. You stop trying to fix broken systems and start deciding whether you should even be in them. Because not every environment deserves your effort. That's the shift. Not working harder, seeing clearer. Because once you understand the system, you're no longer trapped inside it. You're navigating it, and that changes everything. You don't become cynical. You become aware. You become precise. You become someone the system can't easily ignore or quietly replace. And that's the real advantage. No talent, not effort, clarity. Because the moment you see the game for what it is, you stop losing without knowing why. And if this changed how you see things, consider liking the video or subscribing.